There's allegations involving adultery, infidelity. What exactly, if any, is a punishment to the party that caused that adultery or infidelity?
They are very common in most of the cases that I have on my docket at this time.
If you have any experience with certain cases that may involve crypto assets.
In family law, if we don't disclose an asset, it's subject to future division by the court.
But is there one case that truly stands out that you thought, man, this was one of those cases that you're never going to forget?
Very, very skilled litigator on the other side of the case.
How did you go about accomplishing and ultimately convincing the court that, hey, this is proper?
I'm never going to do anything for that one particular client that's going to harm my reputation with that court or hopefully with the other side of that case.
Attorney General is undergoing a particular divorce. Have you heard about that?
You know, we all love to win,
Of course.
but we're not going to win every time.
Do you recommend that they should immediately be able to obtain a prenuptial agreement?
In terms of if we're talking about kids, do we want custody of the kids? Would we like to have a 50-50 possession schedule with the kids?
As you're doing this, you should probably consult with a family lawyer as well.
Absolutely.
Reach out to the Rainwater Law Firm.
Absolutely.
Welcome back, everybody. We are back here for Unlocking Success, episode number 5. And today, I have a real treat for you. I have sitting right next to me, Miss Charlotte Rainwater, who is the founding attorney of the Rainwater Law Firm. And what they deal with is going to be high net worth and high conflict clients dealing with divorce cases specifically. So this is going to be a true insight as to that area of law, how exactly Ms. Rainwater was able to build up this successful law firm, what kind of service specifically she provides to her clients. Potentially you're in need, you want to pay attention. Let's get into this right here. Charlotte, thank you so much for joining us. How do you feel?
Thank you for having me today. I feel pretty good.
Of course, good. I'm happy you're here. Thank you for your time. I know you're very, very, very busy. And so time is valuable, and thank you for that sincerely.
You're welcome.
All right, let's go ahead and get started here. Tell me a little bit about exactly, just to make sure that we have that proper understanding, what exactly do you offer in terms of service to your clients?
So we are, as you've said, we focus primarily on high net worth, high conflict, mainly divorce cases, but also other family law matters, typically still in that high conflict area. I like to approach each case individually.
Okay.
Yes, they're all bound by the family code in Texas, but I think that the clients that are seeking out the services of my firm are looking for representation that's not just intelligent representation, but that is goal-oriented representation. We do not want to approach our clients' cases in a cookie-cutter manner. We want them each to feel like they have individual access to us. There's a lot of client communication. There is just, I think, a different level maybe of service is the best way to say it in the particular area that we focus on.
So what do you think actually makes you stand out from folks who may handle similar cases?
I think that we provide a lot of individual attention to our clients that maybe some of the other firms, maybe they don't quite have that same level of individual attention that we provide. I think that a lot of firms have almost like one playbook that they run on how they manage their cases, where we really want, from the very first day that we meet with them, the very first consultation, to know what the individual goals of that client are. And then we strategize on how we're going to meet those individual goals while allowing them to kind of stay true to themselves as we proceed through the divorce process.
Understood. So I presume at many points or many cases, you may represent husband. On other cases, you may represent wife. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. So it's not like, hey, I only represent one particular party of that manage.
It's a pretty good mix of,
Okay.
yeah, almost a balanced mix, I would say, across the firm.
Whoever gets to you first.
Yep, that's it.
Understood. Tell me, Charlotte, how exactly did you come about saying, this is the area of law specifically that I want to do?
I totally fell into it by accident.
How so?
So when I was in law school
Okay.
in 1996, I had decided before I went to law school that I wanted to be a toxic tort lawyer. So I wanted to do environmental law with a focus on toxic tort mass litigation.
Okay.
Um, took some classes that were required in law school for me to be able to do that. Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, international environmental treaties, those types of classes that would build that resume. In October of 1996, my second year of law school, I was approached to do a brief for a family law attorney who had no law clerk, but she was a friend of my husband's that he worked out with at the gym.
Okay.
And she was a really big, heavy hitter family law attorney, but she didn't have time to write this brief. So she approached me. I wrote the brief for her. It apparently did some really good things in the case that she was working on.
Fantastic.
And so then I was offered a law clerk position at her firm,
Beautiful.
small solo family law firm. I was told in the beginning that it was not going to become a permanent job because she had never had an associate, didn't plan on having an associate. And so I, was safe in my job as a law clerk, but was going to need to find other employment. And as it got closer to my law school graduation, because I stayed at her firm the whole time.
Wow. All through law school.
All through law school. And as it got closer to the spring that I was going to graduate, she offered me a permanent position with the firm.
She realized your value, huh?
I guess she did. And so all she did was family law. She was board certified in it, super smart, great, amazing, like teacher, mentor. And I was with her firm from law school graduation until I was there a total of 21 years, basically, from starting at the clerk level through becoming a named partner in the firm and staying on at that point.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What kind of, were you already with that mindset of, I need to work hard, I need to demonstrate my value, I need to make sure that I'm consistently working and growing in learning something new, sharpening my skills? Or was it just day in and day out, let me see how today goes? What exactly do you think was the difference here that allowed you to have that success to go from having no true job security as a law clerk to suddenly becoming a named partner at that firm?
So I think it absolutely goes to who you are and how you approach it. And I think, it's kind of how I approach anything. It's if I have a passion for it, it's something that's important to me. It's something that I want to do. I just get up every day, give it my all, try to learn something new every day, try to go to all those CLEs to learn all that information, learn one new thing at every CLE. It was worth the cost of admission. That's just the way I approached that practice. It was interesting. I was learning something new every day, which I think made me lean into, being, an asset to her firm and, just really allowed me to fit in and explore this area that I wasn't familiar with, but that kind of started to begin to fascinate me. It was certainly much more interesting than the environmental law classes that I was taking at school. That regulatory, base was, kind of boring compared to the excitement of, family law every day and something new and different that was going to be on my desk every morning. So I think if you combine that with just, a good work ethic, just showing up on time.
So important.
Yeah. 90% of your success in life is going to be from just showing up.
Showing up.
Show up and show up on time. That's even better, even more important. Show up with a good attitude. Show up willing to learn something, regardless of who it's from.
Enthusiastic, showing up, energized, ready to learn and ready to execute.
Absolutely. And then how are you going to have a bad day if those are your goals every day, right?
Agreed. So you think using those same principles allowed you to excel all throughout that chapter in your life to ultimately then say, I'm going to open up my own firm?
I think so.
Or was it something that ultimately potentially landed as an accident, as you stated?
Well, that was kind of an accident too.
As well.
And so I was with her for all those years and was a named partner in the firm. We grew the firm from just one lawyer
Okay.
with her originally. When the firm ultimately like came to kind of a finalization, we had 4 lawyers, a very large staff, great firm. She was 15 years ish older than me, and so she was at a different place in her life than I was. Um, she was more at that point focused on what the plan was going to be between kind of that point in time for her and perhaps, looking at going to part-time or retiring, something to that effect. And I was, of course, kind of really just hitting my stride, as a lawyer at that point. And her goal for herself and for the firm was to basically maybe become part of maybe a larger firm, maybe even a civil type firm.
Okay. So looking
And
for an exit type?
yeah, yeah. And that was not something I had ever done at that point in my career. We had always just been family law
Right.
and focused on family law. And I just wasn't sure that that was going to be the right fit for me. But it certainly should have been something that she was able to explore. And ultimately that's what happened. I decided that I wanted to continue to just pursue solely family law.
Understood.
And she really wanted to be a part of something, that was bigger than that.
And you started Rainwater Law Firm, do you recall the year?
It was September 1st of 2017, right after the
Okay.
hurricane.
Right after the hurricane, too. What hurricane, by the way?
That would have been Harvey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because Harvey was, I think, mid to late August of 2017.
That's right.
Yeah, and I had decided right before that I was doing this, and September
Talk to
1st,
me about
2017 was it.
talk to me about your vision of Rainwater Law Firm, however. Was it something that you truly sat down and executed and said, okay, this is going to be my business plan? Because right before this podcast started, we were chatting about how, unfortunately, when you and I were in law school, at least my experience personally was, yeah, they teach you how to think like a lawyer, how to really strategize, understand the law, be able to interpret it. But there was really no education as to how to run a law firm, how to run a business, what it really takes to be able to run a successful business and scale it. What was it exactly that you engaged upon to say, this is going to be the vision for Rainwater Law Firm?
Really good question. And so, I think at that point, because I'd been practicing for quite some time because I got my license in November of 1998. And so I'd been practicing for quite a while. And I had, like I said, she was my former law partner, great mentor, good businesswoman, sharp, smart, great litigator. So all those things that you would want, for someone to teach you all those years, she had taught me. And I was doing a lot of management and stuff at the previous firm.
Okay.
So I knew how to hire people. I knew how to, I knew, about hours and getting bills out on time and all that important stuff, that's there as a lawyer, just the basics. She wasn't a business major, no, and neither was I. And as you've pointed out, there was no law school management class for either one of us in law school. So I sort of was building off of what I had been taught all those years at her firm and what I had picked up and learned there. What I then had to figure out when I wanted to do my own thing was I knew what I wanted the core values of the firm to be,
Okay.
which are all the non-businessy type things, right? All those things that are close to your heart and that, as we spoke a moment ago, make it worth showing up at every day. But you also have to consider it is a business.
It is.
And we have, between us, we have many people that work for us that rely on us. And their families rely on us. And so it needs to be a profitable business as well. Otherwise, it doesn't work for any of us. And so there was that part that I wasn't proficient in because I never had a class in that. And I was an English major in school. I was not a business major. Maybe I should have done that differently had I, looked back on it like that. No, looking back on it, yeah, hindsight. But I was married to a business major. So that helped.
Beautiful.
Because what I did when I decided to do this, and I sat down with my husband and I spoke with him about it, because he was a very successful business person and he was a business major, he did sit down with me truly, and we did plot out an absolutely very detailed business plan. And we did it about, where I was starting from, where I wanted to be in a year, and where I wanted to be in 2 years and 3 years and 5 years, and how did I want to scale it, and was what I wanted to do scalable, and what did that look like for me, and what did that look like for my employees. And so I think that because he had places to shore up my deficits, and that it made me, well, definitely thankful, but also a lot more comfortable embarking on that
Understood.
venture, and putting my vision and my kind of touchy-feely stuff together with what really would be a workable, scalable business.
To be able to execute on it.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the times there's entrepreneurs who, have this particular vision in mind. And as they start engaging in trying to execute to accomplish such vision, they realize that they're going to have to be malleable. They're going to have to really pivot and transition in the journey, but not necessarily understanding that the vision shouldn't change. Rather, the vision should stay the same, but the journey is going to be different for everybody. Has that been a situation that you've encountered where, hey, this was my vision. I sat down with my husband and I really thought out, this business plan that was completely detailed. Did you follow that to the T, looking back on it now?
Hmm.
Or was it a situation that, man, there was times where I just needed to go ahead and modify, adjust, and pivot and really make sure it happened to where you are now, which is still operating the Rainwater law firm?
Yeah, I think definitely there have been changes along the way. The goals, those inspirational goals that I talked about,
Yeah.
those are absolutely still there. So that core, like, values and ideas, and that, that what makes you get up every morning and
Right.
and show up and stay there all day and sometimes into the night,
Yeah.
that part's still there. But yeah, the business plan tweaks have been made to it. Because although my husband was a very successful business guy, he was not a lawyer, and he had not worked in law firms. And so his business acumen and the expertise that he brought was in a different area. A lot of those things transition over for sure, because at the heart, it is still a business.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that I think he sort of made his projections on based on his experience in his businesses versus it didn't really translate over exactly to the law firm. Some things transitioned faster, some things transitioned slower.
Mm.
And there were just pieces of it that, yeah, we had to make tweaks to along the way. Things grew a little faster than I thought they were going to at one point. And so I kind of outgrew even my physical space at one point. I was like a goldfish that had grown to the size of their bowl. And, at one point in time, I found myself with a young associate attorney who was literally sitting at the receptionist desk because I had no place else to put her. And so those pieces of it, had to be tweaked a little bit. But
As you went along the way.
yeah, but I would say the goals and the visions and stuff remain the same.
Talk to me about, at this point in time, how many lawyers do you have at your office?
Myself and 3 others at the moment. So 4
Understood.
total at the firm.
I've been talking to a whole lot of folks in the legal industry, and there's different perspectives. I'll give you the example. So on one hand, there's a perspective that we need to have as many people that we can in our team to be able to, scale and continue growing and be able to hit these goals that we have in mind, whether they're economical or not. Compared to the other hand, we have folks who say, well, look, I don't really need a large team here. As long as we're able to be efficient, as long as we are able to navigate and execute and provide this high quality service to our clients, we're going to be able to grow. So on what spectrum do you find yourself? Is it the first one where, hey, we need a large team, as largest as possible, to be able to execute these goals that I have in mind? Or is it, look, as long as we have a nimble team that we can continuously, efficiently provide this high quality service to our clients, we're going to be able to execute?
I think I definitely lean more towards the second.
Okay.
Because I do think that, as I go back to it, it's a business.
Right.
And so as a business, overhead's important. And so that large team, there's a lot of overhead associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you can be efficient and effective and serve those clients and serve them well, without having, it's a balance, certainly if you need someone or you notice a need or you notice an area that your clients are not being serviced in, if you have that efficient, effective team, you can always bring on one more.
Filling that role.
Filling that role.
Got
But I'm tend to be more of a let's target the need, let's see what role we need to fill, as opposed to trying to find something for someone to do.
Now, on that note, Charlotte, and that's certainly great feedback, but I got to a point in my career where I was facing this dilemma, and it's truly a dichotomy where I needed to balance it accordingly, where I said, okay, do you want to continue being a lawyer? Because as you stated, like at the end of the day, you still have to understand that, people that are in your team, they're not depending on you specifically for them and their families. And it becomes in a situation for me, at least, that I needed to really balance and understand, do I want to continue being a lawyer where I take on these cases, where I myself am personally involved, where I myself am in court on a daily basis, executing and providing this service? Or do I want to be a CEO and be able to ultimately just make sure that the service stays consistent, stays high quality, and be able to then have rising stars within the team that can fulfill those roles and provide the service directly to our clients? Where do you see yourself on that dichotomy there? Is it more of, I want to be able to personally handle the case, every case that comes into this firm, the Rainwater Law Firm? Or is it more of, we have fully capable individuals that can provide this high quality service to our clients?
So I'm sort of on the fence. I'm kind of in the best of both worlds right now, because when I started the firm, and it was only me at the time I started, I definitely was still in the mindset of, I wanted to be, the one that was the lead on every case, right? But as I was able to grow the firm and bring on lawyers, I targeted lawyers that I wanted to bring on because I saw that they had that same drive, zeal, special talent, passion for
Right.
family law that I had. And so I targeted and hired those people so that they too have their own dockets, but they process and handle themselves basically in a really similar fashion to me. So I still have this amazing docket of cases that I find interesting and stimulating and exciting, and I get to go to court on those cases. But I also have this amazing team of people that are incredibly bright, incredibly talented, who help me on my cases, but also have their own dockets, and they have their own cases that I know nothing about. But I trust that they are down there doing good work for these clients and making great reputations for themselves in front of the judges.
Fantastic. At the end of the day, the clients are better served because, as you stated, you have these individuals that are providing different legal perspectives to be able to then find the best solutions for your clients. Is that the case?
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. You mentioned another thing here. You targeted lawyers who had that same passion, the same zeal to be able to advocate fully and advance client interests, specifically your area of law, family law. Talk to me a little bit about talent acquisition. Is there a particular strategy that you deploy when you're looking for lawyers? Or is it more of, I've seen this person in court, I see them consistently, I've seen them in trial, I know how, they're passionate about, providing this high quality service to the client. How do you target these lawyers?
So some of both. One of them that she's sort of the senior associate at the firm, just because of years of experience. She is someone that I not only knew as a lawyer, and saw her work in other firms and in the family courts, both in Harris County and surrounding counties, but she had been a longtime family law paralegal before that. And I was impressed with her skills as a paralegal, and then was really proud of her when she went to law school and then got the benefit of, I mean, we're a small, even though we're a big city, it's a small bar. And
True.
so I got to see her perform and, hearings and trials and stuff over the years. And so when it came time for me I was looking for a lawyer with a certain level of experience. And I approached her privately and said, hey, why don't you come have dinner with me? I think it would be great for us to talk,
Okay.
because I was impressed with who she was and the talent that she had. One of the other lawyers that I acquired, I kind of put a feeler out to a few other family law attorneys of, hey, I really would like to find somebody with this level of,
Mm.
experience out of school for this length of time that's really wanting to practice family law. Maybe that needs, a mentor, maybe that would, like to do this, in the future. I really want to cultivate someone, would like someone that I can mentor. Really just looking for someone who's a lot like me. And I put also these same feelers out to a few of the family court judges and said, if you've seen somebody like this come into your court, and you think that they might be interested,
Let me
pass my name along, let me know, or give them my name and number. And I had a lawyer who contacted me and a judge who contacted me, and both of them had the same person's name.
Fantastic.
And so ultimately I ended up hiring that person also, and she's great. And
Well,
then,
on that note, however, because I don't want to interrupt your thought process, but
yeah.
how did you, so you had this person recommended to you. Hey, I'm going to reach out to this person on LinkedIn. Or, hey, I see her in court or him in court. Let me just reach out to them and introduce myself.
Yeah.
What exactly was that process?
So I did not know her, but when both of the people that I trusted a great deal contacted me with the same person's name, I reached out to the one who was actually a friend of mine as well as a colleague and said, well, how do I get in touch with this person? And he said, oh, don't worry, I'll send her an email and tell her to get in touch with you. And so that was how that one came about.
How important is this saying where your network is your net worth? You mentioned right now judges, colleagues, your husband. How important is it truly to have this intentionality about having a proper network, continuously work on your network, and continue to grow it?
I think it's really critical. Um, and I say that because I don't know that your network has to be huge, but it has to be worthy. And so I think if you have, if you have a team that has your back, the team can be fairly small,
Right.
but if if your goal is the same, it's going to be fine.
You can
Um,
accomplish it.
you can accomplish it. And I don't think it has to be large, but I do think it has to be worthy.
Now, that's a great note right there. That's certainly something where instead of focusing on having a large network, have a worthy network. Love it. Talk to me about some of your high stake or high net worth cases. Because look, in today's day and age, you hear a whole lot about crypto this, crypto that, and uh, if you have any experience with certain cases that may involve crypto assets, enlighten me a little bit about how does distribution work? I mean, how do you go about in even finding that potentially there's assets that are uh, crypto associated? Is there a certain process that you immediately engage in trying to determine, okay, does this person actually have certain crypto assets or crypto coins or anything involving crypto? Walk me through that.
So they are very common in most of the cases that I have on my docket at this time. We fortunately in civil law are able to do discovery, and we absolutely ask several questions about, in any way, shape, or form that we could about getting information about crypto assets.
Got it.
Um, and they are, if someone is not honest and forthright, it would be a difficult area to really find out
Mhm.
about in, in less than a traditional discovery sense. It's not something you could just go subpoena records from the bank to obtain. It becomes very difficult to find out. But I think at least most of the people that I deal with, especially like I said, it's a small bar, large city, small bar.
Right.
most of the lawyers that are representing the clients on the other side of my cases, which may be the clients that have the crypto assets.
Right.
If I'm seeking discovery from them, they are honest, they are forthright, and they are going to, if they know that their client has those crypto assets, they are going to make sure that those get disclosed.
Good.
Because in family law, if we don't disclose an asset, it's subject to future division by the court.
Mm.
And so that's not really a place that any of us as family lawyers want to be, is, in the position
And that
of
technically
having
would
to.
be a fraud in the community property, if I'm not mistaken.
It could very well be. It could
Yeah.
very well be if someone intentionally didn't disclose.
So walk me through, how exactly is that properly distributed between the parties?
So the crypto is a little difficult. I mean, you could certainly have someone, basically open up their own crypto account, and then you could, carve out, from the other person's crypto account, the appropriate methodology to balance it out. But most often you will have one spouse who might be really smart and educated about crypto, and the other spouse is probably in the dark about
Right.
crypto, is what I see most often. And so that spouse that's really unsure about that asset, or really doesn't know as much as the other spouse about that asset, quite frequently they are fine with leaving the entirety of that particular asset with the spouse that knows the most about it, and they will take, an offsetting asset
With another
to,
asset.
to
Understood.
balance
Okay.
it out,
That
that
makes
they're more
sense.
comfortable with.
That makes sense. Now, and this is something that I'm sure you're very familiar with. Should the case be that you're dealing with these high net worth individuals, and the cases, of course, involving the distribution of these assets, if an individual has, let's say, properties that are located in the Bahamas, and the marriage occurred in the state of Texas, what exactly is going to happen to that property that's located in the Bahamas? Does the Bahamian law apply, or is it a situation that Texas law applies because the marriage occurred in Texas?
Well, Texas law applies to the divorce and the distribution of the marital estate. And so that property, although it's in the Bahamas, if it was acquired during the marriage, then under Texas law, it is considered part of the community estate. And so it will be divided in that divorce decree. Now, it becomes a different issue as to, once the divorce decree occurs, if the property is in one name or the other and not both names, there are going to be some hurdles that you're going to have to go through in order to really acquire what may be your interest in that property, recognized by particularly an outside country. But as far as the Texas divorce and the Texas division of property, it's absolutely going to be mentioned in that decree. It's absolutely is subject to division by the judge.
So to simplify it and understand that correctly, technically you can, under Texas law, you would be able to distribute that asset properly because it is part of the community property. But the understanding is that wherever that asset may be located, if it's in the Bahamas, as in that example, Bahamian law may not actually allow that distribution to take place or to be enforced technically in the Bahamas.
Possibly.
Got it. Understood. Now, you hear a whole lot about these cases where there's allegations involving adultery, infidelity in Texas. What exactly, if any, is a punishment to the party that it's caused that adultery or infidelity, and the reason for the divorce to take place? Is there some type of punishment?
Well, the most common one that you see is it's financial. And so typically, if you have adultery that's taken place, I mean, certainly you're going to have hurt feelings. But the most common way that it's handled, at least in the high net worth cases, is it's handled in terms of the overall division of property, or potentially handled in terms of like a waste claim, which is a waste claim is really, it's the long name for it is reconstitution of the marital estate.
Hold on. Let's break that down in simplified ways.
Okay.
The first one that you mentioned, which technically, hey, it's going to be taking into account in regards to the distribution of the assets or the property. I'm sorry. What exactly is the case? Meaning, do you say, hey, because you did this, you're going to be punished, you're going to actually have to let this go because of this?
Potentially. And so the way that you would approach it is, in Texas, community property state, everyone assumes that that means 50-50, like a 50-50 division, of the estate. And I would say that that's a pretty fair assumption.
Okay.
Fair and equitable, just and right division, 50-50. But if someone has been a bad actor, if someone has committed adultery, and there's really, no other factors to consider in terms of that division, any judge would have the right to determine that that commission of the adultery is something that should be considered when they're determining whether or not they're going to distribute out the net marital estate in an equal manner, or are they going to punish that person a little bit for what they've done, and maybe reward the other person for what's transpired in terms of
That bad act.
Understood.
Now, the second prong you mentioned here, the waste claim, am I saying that correct?
Yes.
Walk me through that. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Simplify it for me.
So a waste claim or a reconstitution of the marital estate claim is it's really monetizing almost the bad acts in terms of the finances that were spent. And, I'll just give an example. If, say, a wife decided to step out on her husband, and she, had a relationship with someone, and she decided that she was going to use community funds to maybe purchase a car for this person that she was having this relationship with.
Okay.
Then the husband, in the divorce context, could say, well, the community estate derived no benefit from the use of our funds for you to purchase this third party, this vehicle. And so I want the funds that would have been in our community estate had you not purchased this vehicle for this person to go on your side of the ledger as a waste claim.
Understood.
So it's almost like a fictitious asset that appears on the spreadsheet that we use to divide
and further reduce whatever that person potentially was originally entitled to.
Yes.
Understood. That's a lot more clear. Now, you mentioned here at the start, Charlotte, that really what makes you stand out and your firm stand out is because of the close and careful attention that you offer to your clients, a whole lot of hand-holding as well, I presume. Can you give me an example as to how that particular service that you offer allowed a proper change for any of your clients or any of your cases? And by that, I mean, because we executed accordingly on the way that we offer this service, we were able to accomplish X.
I think that because divorce in particular is such an emotional area for our clients. They come in, we have really good people, but we are getting them at a really bad point in their life. And so they come in, some of them are just devastated emotionally. And so we want to leave them in a better place. And so what we try to do by having them kind of establish those goals, like how do we want to do this? How do we want to handle this case? Because each of them will have their own particular experiences or thoughts that as to how they want it to proceed. And then you develop strategies as to how you're going to keep those goals in mind, but and get to the end result that they want, because that's something that I think is important from the very beginning of the case. You have to know what's the ultimate goal, and how do we want to conduct ourselves to get there, because we want to adhere to that with them. And a lot of times it requires, like I said, a lot of contact, a lot of communication.
How are you able to flesh out what exactly that goal is, especially if it's a situation, as you stated, this may be one of the most difficult times that they're going through. They're probably not thinking clearly. Emotions are at play. How are you able to then allow the opportunity for the individual to say, this is the ultimate goal that I wish to accomplish?
Well, we usually don't necessarily make them have one ultimate goal, but we have several targeted goals. And so, I mean, of course, in the divorce context, I mean, the ultimate goal typically for most of my clients is that they want to get the divorce, right? That's the
Okay.
ultimate goal. But
Sure.
the other goals we set and the strategies that we employ to get there are, how do we want to get it?
Hmm.
And what do we want to get from it? And so in terms of, if we're talking about kids, do we want custody of the kids? Would we like to have a 50-50 possession schedule with the kids? In terms of the property, is it really our goal to get a significantly different division than a 50-50, or is it the client's goal to get a 50-50? And then if so, what can we do, from a strategy perspective to work with the client and hope to meet some, if not all of those goals?
It sounds like emotionally it takes a toll, not only on the parties, but potentially on you guys who are actually handling these cases.
But that's what makes it exciting,
That's what makes it exciting for you, you say.
right? Because it's like the family code's the same, the laws are all the same, the cases are all what they are, but every case is different. You're applying the law to it, but every set of facts is different. I think it's the emotional and it's the human aspect of it that makes it
Mm.
interesting. And so they're all different, and that's what makes it challenging, and that's what makes it interesting, and that's what makes you learn something new on every case. And that's what makes you continue to
Keep going day in and day out.
going day in and day out.
How do you sleep at night, Charlotte?
Pretty well,
Like a baby?
like a baby.
Because I was gonna say it truly sounds like it's a situation where it's high stress, and specifically because these folks are placing a whole lot of weight on your shoulders as to, hey, I want to be able to have full custody of my children, and if I don't, it's going to be something that's going to break me. Do you do anything specifically to potentially decompress at all whatsoever? Or is it just because you're looking at it with that perspective of, I don't have to do this, rather I get to do this? You think it just keeps you going?
I think that's for sure part of it. I don't have to do this. I get to do this. Um, I don't have to take every case. I'm really fortunate that way.
Fantastic.
And so, the people that I choose to engage with as clients, I think it's a mutually beneficial relationship. They've chosen me and I've chosen them in the same way. And so you're right. There's a lot of stress to it.
Yeah.
And definitely you have to learn how to manage that. They also have to learn how to manage it. So I think one of the things that you can do for them too is to make sure that, just like we were talking about networking earlier, you want to help them create a team that's going to support them.
Mhm.
And certainly our law office and our legal team are part of that support network for them. But you also want to target other professionals that can also be a support for them as well as yourself. So
Give me some examples.
counseling and therapy, super important in what I do, because they need that other person to help process this really awful time with them.
That makes sense.
So having a professional there to help lift them up to do that is fantastic. Financial professionals. If you're representing a spouse who really is not the person that really understands all of the finances, like we were talking
Right.
about the cryptocurrency
Being in the dark.
earlier, being in the dark, or even just not knowing as much as the other person, or maybe this person's background was not in business and finance, but the person that they're married to was, and so they're really the one that managed those finances and stuff. You want to get those professionals for your client and make them part of that team so that they feel like they're educated about the process,
Fantastic.
that they're making good, educated decisions. You're there to shore them up and give them that legal advice, and to, talk about the what ifs and the, what's my best case scenario? What's my worst case scenario? Realistically, it's going to fall someplace between those two, right?
Right.
And so that's your range that you're going to be playing in. But if we're playing in this range, what's the best outcome for this person?
Mm.
And really, because it's their life, you want them to have ownership and have say in what that outcome is as well. And so I think putting that team together of not just the legal team,
Right.
but that team of other professionals and that just team of other support that can really help them through that helps you reach those goals for them.
Now, what do you say to those folks who you mentioned, well, in many cases, potentially the individual is really doesn't have that acumen to understand exactly the financial aspect of it. And because of such reason, they may not really be aware as to who exactly to rely upon as far as financial professionals that can really provide a further, insight as to, hey, this is actually the proper distribution, or what exactly certain valued at the certain asset that you may be looking at. What do you tell these individuals that don't know how exactly to go about in making that educated decision when determining who to hire, who to turn to for that proper advice? Or is it because of the experience that you've gained through your, handling of these cases that more of this is the professional that you should consult with?
So I never give someone just one because I always think that it's and this is kind of true of picking a lawyer too.
Right.
You should never go with just one. You should always, and don't laugh, but I liken it to, buying really expensive shoes. And so,
Okay.
if I go into Saks and I see there's gorgeous, expensive, sparkly shoes everywhere in there, and they're all going to cost about the same and they're all expensive.
Yeah.
Um, and, but a certain brand just might not fit my foot the right way.
Mm.
And if I'm going to pay this for this shoe, which I've got kind of a skinny heel, it doesn't really feel very good on it. I know although it looks really good in the box, I'm probably not going to use it that much.
Got it.
Or I could pay the same for this shoe here and it's equally expensive, but I'm going to wear it a lot because it feels right on. And so I think you approach hiring a lawyer, at least a family lawyer, I think you approach that way. What's the right fit for me? What's the right fit for my case? But you also apply that to the professionals. And so the counselors that you might recommend, because having done this for as long as I have, yes, I know a lot of counselors and therapists in the metropolitan area, but you want it to be the right fit for that person. But you also want them to take ownership of it and have them have a say in who they're working with and who they're comfortable
Okay.
with. So I always make a minimum of 3 names typically on
Nice.
everything, whether it's financial advisors, whether it's counselors and therapists, whether it's a CPA. A lot of these
Got it.
people, one person gets the CPA and the divorce, the other person has to go find a new one. And so never just want to give one because I just feel like they should have some say, they should have some ownership. But certainly, benefit from my experience of all these people that I've been fortunate enough to work with for the past 27 years and have this, good feelings about anybody that I would, put their name on any of those lists for them.
Excellent. Can you tell me about a particular case that you're most proud of? Because I'm sure there's many, but is there one case that truly stands out that you thought, man, this was one of those cases that you're never going to forget?
Yeah, there's a couple. And so one of the most recent ones was it was very challenging because we ended up applying another state's law. And I'm not licensed in any state other than Texas. And
Oh.
so, but it was one of those interesting things because you learn something new every day. You want to lean into, those exciting and challenging areas. And so I represented a gentleman who had been married for quite some time to his wife, 20 plus years, maybe 25 plus years, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been
Okay.
several years. And very, very skilled litigator on the other side of the case. And there was a premarital agreement that had been signed in another state.
Okay.
And it was, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it was 2 or 3 pages long. And normally the premarital agreements that I draft here in Texas are 50, 60 pages long.
50, 60 pages.
So a little different. And so I thought, okay, well, this doesn't look like what I'm used to seeing, but doesn't mean it's wrong, right? It doesn't mean it's bad. It had 2 signatures on it. It had been witnessed by two other people, because in this particular state, they required witnesses much like we do on our wills and trusts. Um, and so I thought, well, I need to educate myself first about this document and how did it come about, and does it comply with the law in this other state, and what is the law in this other state, and then if it does comply with the law in this other state, why isn't it good? Why wouldn't it be okay?
Well, let me ask you this. Was it a situation that you were actually wanting for this agreement to be enforced?
Oh, I very much wanted it to be enforced.
Understood. Okay, got it. Okay. And how did you go about accomplishing and ultimately convincing a court that, hey, this is proper?
So I started by finding a lawyer in the other state.
Okay.
And I actually talked to the lawyer that drafted the document in the other state as well,
Fantastic.
and talked to him about how it came about, what it was, why they did it, why it was only 2 pages.
Compared to your 50, 60
Compared to
over
my
here.
50 or 60, all those things. And then I went to basically a board certified family lawyer also in that state, someone that I had been recommended by a friend, and spoke with him and found out that this 2-3 page document was absolutely still valid in their state. And so if I had walked into court in that particular state, that document would have automatically been upheld. But like I said, I had a very challenging litigator on the other side, and I knew that he was going to be absolutely,
Arguing against it.
priority number one was going to be to get that thing thrown out.
Yeah.
And so, we hired the right professionals. We built that team that I talked about, had that, board certified family lawyer from that other state as a consultant, part of that team who could help me. Reached out to an appellate lawyer who is a friend of mine, brought her in on that team to tell me, if this is your end goal, these are steps on how you would reach this end goal. And so then just started working those steps by going through the processes here, and ultimately, had a judge rule on my request to basically apply the other state's law to this particular document.
And held that it was proper.
And held that it was valid and enforceable ultimately under that state's law.
Fantastically executed. On that note, when you say, hey, we want to make sure that we have a team of professionals that can allow us to efficiently work, who's responsible for these fees?
In divorce work, it's the clients. And so it's the community marital estate that's going to pay for the fees of both the lawyers and the experts. Because as we just kind of talked about, we had an appellate expert, we had a expert from another state, their law. In that particular case, we also had forensic accounting experts.
My God.
We had, definitely a team of.
Is there a need for there to be court orders in place that allow you to tap into these assets to the community property?
There can be. So in that particular case, I was fortunate enough that my client was a high wage earning individual.
Okay.
And so he certainly had access to his own, earnings to do that.
Understood.
If you're representing the other side of the case, perhaps, you're representing a housewife or a house husband or whatever who may not have access to generate their own funds and income. There are standards contained within the Texas Family Code of what the judge has to consider if the judge is going to award that person some form of interim attorney's fees or interim expert fees, or access to funds to assist them, during the case if they're not generating enough of their own funds.
Understood. Now, I've also done a little bit of dissection here in your background, Charlotte, and it's certainly impressive, to say the least. I will let you know. It's something where I've noticed also that at this point, you've engaged in presenting at CLEs as well.
I have.
Correct?
I have.
What drives you to say, I'm going to be able to then give back to my legal community? I want to be able to present at CLEs. Is there a certain thought process there?
So I think it was how I was raised by that first employer that I went to work for. It was something that was it was really important to her. And so I think she made me see the value and benefit of it. It's
Mm.
something that I make all of my associates do.
Present it,
Well,
please.
mhm.
Oh,
And
okay.
and so it's encouraged by us. I want them, because again, I think it's that learning something new, the value of that, the keeping it fresh, the
Right.
making it interesting,
Mhm.
and the giving back aspect, the mentoring aspect of it.
Right.
So there's a local group called the Berta Rhodes Rayborn Family Law Ends of Court, and it's really designated for attorneys of all experience levels
Mm.
who want to practice family law.
Okay.
And it's based here in Harris County.
Fantastic.
I was a member as a young lawyer, and there are teams that are put together through the membership of the organization, and they're all different experience levels of lawyers on each team.
Got it.
And each team has to present on a certain topic.
Oh, wow.
And you get
Fantastic.
CLE experience for it and CLE credit and all of that.
Excellent.
And so because I was a member as a baby lawyer, all of my associates are also members, because they
It's a
just,
requisite, huh?
it is, it's a requisite. And, it also gives them, I don't want us to be an echo chamber. I want them to go and be mentored and get experience from other family lawyers
That's
that have
fantastic.
different backgrounds and different experiences than maybe I do. I think that's the way that you learn and grow. And I think it's really important for them to, stay up on current trends and topics in family law. And I certainly think that speaking and doing that and giving your time,
That's a great perspective to
it
have
does that.
because you ultimately, want to make sure that whoever's on your team continuously stays sharp because you are providing the high quality service to your clients. But what about that same note where you mentioned where you're targeting certain lawyers who, demonstrate a particular passion and zeal in advocating for your clients? Do you ever have that concern that, okay, if I'm sending them off to do this, potentially other individuals who are in your area who may see them and become a fan of them, they may say, well, I'm going to go ahead and target this particular lawyer. Is that ever a concern at all?
It is. And so I think that's where the business part of it comes into play, right? So I think that that's where you really have to think about it like a business, and you have to run it like a business. And so you have to make sure that your benefits you're offering are competitive, that your salaries you're offering are competitive, that your bonuses you're offering are competitive. And so I think as long as you're providing that mentoring, nurturing, really kind of different environment. So the feel good piece of it, like
Yeah.
that's what you're there for.
Right.
Or that's what I'm there for, the feel good piece of it.
Right.
But if you also have really that good basic, business plan that's in place that provides those other things to them that are competitive in the market, if you've got those two things working together, then hopefully you don't lose your talent.
Should not be any issue.
I hope not.
Walk me through. I know you mentioned you certainly want to have a particular set of values that you always operate your firm on. Is there any that come to mind here for you?
So I think the most important thing that you can have is your reputation.
It's huge.
And that is what I convey to those that I work with. And I say this frequently to them, and I say it frequently to sometimes people on the other side of my case. Um,
Mm.
I may only represent that particular client one time in my career, but I'm going to be in that particular court probably one time every week. And I'm going to have the other attorney on the other side of my case probably one time every month. And
Right.
so I'm never going to do anything for that one
Yeah.
particular client that's going to harm my reputation
Mhm.
with that court, or hopefully with the other side of that case,
And
because I'm going to have a lot of cases with them, but only maybe one with this one. And I think that's really important for the other attorneys in my firm to know that too, is you want to make sure that you've got that stellar, good, dependable, honest reputation with a lot of integrity with those
Respectful,
people that
professional.
really matter.
That's fantastic. Is there any thought that you've given as to what you hope your legacy is?
Hmm. I really haven't in that sense. I would hope it's that I'm fair, that I'm thoughtful, that I approach things with intelligence, that I don't fight for the sake of fighting, that no one would ever question my integrity about something, and that ultimately whatever reputation that I have would be something that when someone thought about me in the future, that they would think about me in a positive way.
Beautiful. Fantastic. As entrepreneurs, Charlotte, there's always going to be setbacks that we're going to encounter. And I think what truly matters at the end of the day is how you perceive such setback, how you respond to it. Can you give me an example of a particular setback that really made you consider, this may not be for me. This may not be what I actually want to continue doing?
Well, I think, particularly as litigators, we all love to win,
Of course.
but we're not going to win every time. No matter
Exactly.
how good, no matter how prepared, no matter how great the facts are, you're not going to win every time. And so I think the setbacks for me are the losses. And they happen. I mean, I'm fortunate. They don't happen a lot, but they happen.
Right.
And those are tough, particularly in family law, because it is, you have gotten to know these people incredibly well. You know intimate details about their life, and your heart goes out to them and you want to do a good job. And so the losses are hard. And so that it's really hard the next day to be that fired up about going into the office and getting back on it. So I think you have to balance that, get yourself in the right headspace, get yourself in the right heart space. Maybe give yourself a little grace for a day or two.
I was about to say, is there anything specific that you do to be able to get yourself back in tip-top shape and say, hey, I'm right back at it?
Yeah, sometimes I just need a little reboot, a little recharge. So I usually head to the mountains.
The mountains.
It's
What mountains are we talking?
cool up there. The Rockies are
Okay.
just my
There you
favorite.
go. Good deal.
So yeah, the air's thin, but it's cool. And just give myself a little ability to breathe, look out,
Contemplate.
few days out of the office, and then I'm back in and ready and recharged and ready to go again.
Do you have a particular schedule in terms of, I'm in the office Monday through Friday, Monday through Saturday? I know lawyers that work 7 days a week. Or, you know what, in order for me to operate at a high performance level, these are the exact amount of hours that I can work where I'm fully dedicated. I'm optimized in how I'm thinking, how I'm executing. Walk me through your schedule.
Sure. So I'm definitely Monday through Friday, but it is frequently that I will appear up here on a Saturday and or a Sunday.
Same.
It just depends on what needs to be done and what's going on. I'm definitely generally almost always here by 9. If not, then maybe 9:30, but I generally start my day earlier than that. And I've generally done some work at home on some cases and some things and returning emails and text messages and phone calls and stuff before I get here. Dockets typically start anywhere from 8 to 9 for us. So sometimes I'm in court earlier than that. My staff typically leaves mostly about 5. I am almost always here until quite a bit later than that. But I would say 6:30, 7 is an average day for me. So 9 to 6:30 or 7, Monday through Friday.
Is that potentially not now, but at any point in your life, was that ever a point of contention with your husband in any way?
Well, I was fortunate enough to be in a relationship for many years with someone who works longer hours than I do. So his day for most of our time together, and we've been together 26 years now.
Congrats.
Most of that was, he's kind of a 7 to 7 guy.
7 to 7.
So he's out early and he's home fairly late. He does tend to right now get home a little earlier than me, but
has that ever been any issue in terms of, because I know you mentioned you have children. Has that ever been a situation where you kind of think back now and think maybe I should have been more present?
Of course. Parental guilt. Yes. Have it. Absolutely. I mean, my kids two of them are adults. Well, actually, they're all three technically adults now. My son's going to be a senior, but otherwise he's an adult. Um, yeah, sure. I guess during those formative years when they were, elementary school, middle school,
Right.
I probably didn't work as many hours as I do now.
Okay.
Or if I did, I scheduled them differently. So it was less time in the office, more work at home after they went
Understood.
to bed. Because I did try with three of them, it was difficult, but I did try to make sure that I was at the important things at school. I went to the important practices and games and
Excellent.
horseback riding lessons and, basketball tournaments and baseball tournaments and volleyball tournaments and,
Very much present then.
yes, the whole deal. So, and that was important for me at that time. So I did try to be that parent that was there sitting in the stands as much as I possibly could. So if I wasn't required to be in court, I tried to make sure that I got my hours in and billed, but that
Not necessarily from the office.
correct.
Understood.
Correct.
To this day, is there something in particular, a particular habit that you engage in that allows you to perform at a high level?
I think they've changed over the years. So
What did they start off as?
yeah, so of course when you're young and you have all the energy, you don't have to have as many compensating habits. But I think something that I always did was I really like to read on my downtime, just fiction, just to get my head out of what we deal with every day and just escape from reality. So I think that was really important for me. Um, I've always thought that, being healthy was a part of, having your body and mind work well is something that's really important
Okay.
in terms of making sure that you can,
You correlate with one another.
do this at the level that we do. Those things are still important. I find that now that I'm older, I need to wake up a little earlier. I'm not a morning person, so that part's a little different for me. But if I wake up a little earlier and just sort of ease myself into my day a little more slowly, then I think when I get here at, 9 or 9:30,
Right.
I think I'm more productive.
Understood. Okay. So somewhat of a late start, technically.
I think so. But
Okay.
early start at home, but just easing into the day just to kind of get myself in the right, mental and physical framework to like take on the day.
Fantastic. Now, with that understood, I know recently here, it came out, I'm not too sure if you've heard about it. Our Attorney General is undergoing a particular divorce. Have you heard about that?
I did. I was actually in the mountains, doing a
Okay.
little recharge, and I happened to see that mentioned on one of the national news
Saw
shows.
that. So my understanding on it, I think from what I could see and what I know, there was a claim on biblical grounds. Have you ever heard of that before?
I, I have not. I did do a little Google on it to see
Okay.
if I was I had guessed or speculated as to what possibly that meant, and so I did.
You
I,
never encountered it.
no, I never encountered it being phrased in that way.
God.
Because we'll file on grounds of insupportability,
That's right.
or you can file adultery is still a ground in Texas. Abandonment is a ground. There's,
Right.
mental cruelty is a ground. And so there's a few like grounds that aren't insupportability, which is basically a no fault divorce. And so, but I hadn't seen it phrased in that way. It basically, I think biblical, the term that she used, biblical grounds or whatever,
Right.
would, I think, include adultery.
Understood.
Yeah, it would be, because that's one of if you kind of look at, I guess, Christianity, religious, leanings, history, whatever, um, one of the reasons
Adultery.
for a divorce would be
Adultery.
adultery.
Understood. Okay. Because there's a particular process here that allows for these records to be completely sealed. Is that correct?
There is. It's not something that happens in very many cases in family law, because it makes, number one, just the management of the case, it makes it very difficult, because if it's a sealed case, it is typically not just sealed from the outside, it's sealed from the attorneys as well. So
Mhm.
I can't look up and just see what the other side filed.
Oh,
I
wow.
can't, sometimes in certain courts outside of Harris County, I can't even file into my own case. If the case is sealed, I have to notify the court staff that I need to file
Oh,
something and the case has to be opened for me to file it in. And so it's rare that a case is sealed while it's going on.
so let me get that correct. So in those cases, they open them up just for the purpose of you filing certain documentation, then they seal them back up?
In certain counties, yes. Yes, and so no one, including the attorneys actively on the
See.
case, are able to see
Wow.
what's in the case itself, and that is rare.
Got it.
I've been on some cases where it was like that, but that's rare, and it's a very frustrating experience. Um, and so typically, most family law judges, particularly those here in Harris County, do not seal cases.
They don't?
No, only by agreement of the parties.
Oh,
Um,
even if it's a high-profile
particularly,
situation?
even if it's a high profile situation,
Wow.
only by agreement of the parties. Um,
Harris County.
Harris County.
Understood.
And I would say it's true of our surrounding counties too. I mean, by
Right.
agreement of the parties, they
They're
would
just
do it, but it's not common at all to see a case sealed, particularly an active case. Much
Mm.
more so you will see it sealed after a case is over, but then again, I think it is most commonly by agreement of the parties
After post case.
post case.
Understood. Now, for those that are watching and they're high income earners and they are considering marriage, do you recommend that they should immediately be able to obtain a prenuptial agreement?
I
Always recommend.
always recommend.
Why is that the case?
I think it's just, it certainly makes it easier and less costly for them should it end in a divorce because you can always amend the prenup.
Mm,
So if you've married someone and you've protected your separate property, what you
yeah.
came into the marriage with, and you've been married to that person 15, 20 years and you have several kids together and you've acquired homes and property and stuff,
Yeah.
you can always amend that document and be more generous.
Oh, understood. Okay.
But it cuts down on the fees for potentially those forensic accountants and CPAs. It cuts down on maybe years worth of documents that you have to acquire when financial institutions only keep them 5 to 7 years
Takes a
now.
lot of time.
So I think it just simplifies the process if the marriage does end in a divorce.
Understood.
Now, maybe that's not very thoughtful of me as a business person because maybe I'm making less
You want to sound
money
the business, huh?
than I would be if they didn't have a prenup. But I always advise my clients
Understand.
to get that prenup.
What do you tell those folks who unfortunately did not take that advice and ultimately ended up in a marriage and they're now looking at a potential divorce, but there's no agreement? Is it still possible for there to be some type of postnuptial agreement?
Yes. So it probably postnups are a lot harder to get than prenups are.
A lot harder to get or a lot harder to be enforced?
I think in Texas, they're equally enforceable. And
Okay.
Texas we signed on to what's called the Uniform Premarital Agreement Act,
Okay.
which also, even though it's premarital agreements, the policy in Texas is to uphold premaritals and postnups.
Understood.
And so you're coming in, I won't say you're coming in with necessarily a full-blown presumption, but you're coming in with the assumption that these documents are valid.
Understood.
And the other side the challenging side is going to have to work to, overturn them as long as they meet the minimum standards under, our code for both prenups or postnups.
To be enforced, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
What if it's a situation where these parties are of agreement that they're just going to use one single lawyer for that particular agreement, whether it be prenup or postnup? Is that allowed, and is that still something that can be enforced?
In Texas, it's really not allowed
Okay.
because in Texas, just kind of family law in general, we cannot represent two parties to basically the prenup or the postnup or the divorce, because those parties in that sense in Texas have opposing interests.
Even though they're of agreement that they want to use just one particular lawyer.
Yeah, I would never do it
Understood.
because I just think it runs afoul of that concept of they really do have an opposing interest because um in the example, that we had earlier where someone should have probably was a person with wealth coming into it.
Right.
Would I advise them to get a prenup? Yes. The other side, unless they are also a person of wealth and have the same amount of wealth, then their interests are going to be affected negatively,
Understood.
potentially by what we do with that prenup.
So if you're only representing one spouse, is it always the recommendation to the other spouse, hey, you should take this agreement, go find yourself another lawyer, have that lawyer dissect this agreement, properly advise you?
It is always my recommendation that is what happens. I have even encouraged previous clients to give the other person money to go and pay for the lawyer to represent them.
And is that by establishing a particular paper trail?
That's part of it, but I think it certainly if someone's going to challenge the agreement, I think it always looks better because remember, we can challenge them in front of a jury. And so if you're going to have 6 or 12 of your peers,
look at this,
weighing in on this, then I think it probably just has the optics of looking better if the other person was given the agreement in advance, if the other person had a lawyer, an adequate, competent, lawyer to represent them, had some say in the agreement. Did we make any changes that they requested to the agreement? All of those things I think bolster the validity and enforceability of an agreement if it's challenged. And so I always encourage that. I don't always get that, but
of course,
I always encourage it.
Fantastic. I'm going to make sure that the individual who's watching this truly takes the time to rewind what exactly Charlotte just stated, because it's vital and it's important for you to truly make sure that you're taking the proper action. What, in your experience, Charlotte, are the top mistakes that you see most common for these high net worth cases engage on that you come across?
Well, the first would be not getting a prenup.
Number one.
That would be number one. That's what I see most frequently.
But technically, they can still get a postnup.
They can still get a postnup.
Okay.
Perhaps. I think that, sometimes they're just not, if they don't have a prenup, it is really important for those high net worth individuals because so many of them had that high net worth before they came into the marriage, or at least they were on the way to having it before they came into the marriage. And so many of them will, something really common that happens with businesses is people will restructure, reorganize. You'll take an LLC and decide you're going to, restructure the entity because for whatever reason, and you don't realize if you don't have that prenup that's preserved everything, that by even doing a simple restructure, you may have taken something that was very valuable and was your separate property, and you may have converted it to community property, which your spouse now theoretically owns 50% of your interest in.
Let me get that right.
No intention to do that.
So you had this business prior to the marriage, then you restructured it after marriage, and now you made it a community property.
You could have done that. And you don't realize it because, again, it's commonplace for successful entrepreneurs to start, change, restructure, reorganize entities all the time.
Right.
But they don't realize that they may be converting something that was 100% their separate property.
My God. So is the suggestion to then say, hey, as you're doing this, you should probably consult with a family lawyer as well?
Absolutely.
Reach out to the Rainwater Law Firm.
Absolutely.
Understood.
Because the lawyers that are very smart, very capable lawyers are doing these restructures for them, but they're doing it from a business perspective.
Right.
They are not doing it from a family law perspective at all.
Good point.
And so that is one of the common mistakes that we see is that, and that's a terrible conversation to have with your client to explain, because they will tell you, oh no, I started this business 20 years ago and I got married 10 years ago, and
They're operating under the
they're
impression
operating under the
it's completely
assumption that
separate
this is
property.
their separate property. And you have to say, well, yeah, but what about this restructure that you did 7 years ago?
Wow.
And
Hefty mistake right there.
and they look at you and they're like, what do you mean? Why? Why did you do that?
Yeah.
And they will have a very valid reason for it. Well, who helped you do that? And they'll have someone who's very capable who helped them to do that. But you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And many times they have literally converted substantial separate property assets into what now appear to be community assets.
My God. Okay, that's a huge mistake right there. Anything else that comes to mind?
Documents. And so again, those prenups, when you take a prenup and you not only recognize someone's separate property, but maybe you go a step further in the prenup and you say that it's the party's intent that there will be no community property created during the marriage, which is that's a pretty far stance to take in them, but it is common. And so if you have that, you don't really have a great need for a lot of documentation to trace community property from, because they're theoretically under the prenup is no community property. What that
So that is allowed by law?
Yes. In Texas.
You can have it in your prenup agreement one more time, just to make sure everyone understands. You can have it in your prenup agreement to have an understanding with your significant other, your spouse, that anything that after the marriage gets generated is not to be considered community property.
Correct. You can actually state in the prenup that is the intent of the parties that no community estate will be created.
Wow. Understood.
And that can be the parties' agreement, which, and the forensic CPAs are going to hate me for saying this, but it means that you don't have to have the tracing and the documentation that you would normally have to basically sort of piece apart or untangle what may be community from separate.
Fantastic.
And so that's, so I would say a lack of documentation when there is no prenup, because again, most financial institutions, 7 years is kind of the typical amount of time that they'll keep documents. It is terrible. Again, when you have someone who had separate property, didn't get a prenup, they come into your office, they've had this separate property, maybe it's something they inherited from their family, and it's, maybe it's a stock that they inherited from their family, or they inherited it, acquired the stock pre-marriage. Maybe now we're 10 years into the marriage, but there's only 7 years worth of paperwork available to them. So they can't show
that it was actually separate property.
Because they can't go back far enough in time with the documentation to establish it.
So proper documentation, because otherwise you run the risk that could be considered community property.
Yes. So I'm not trying to encourage anybody to become a hoarder, but
okay. Well, I mean, today's day and age, you can have it in a digital file.
You could.
Without there being any issue. Good deal. Okay. Before we wrap up here, Charlotte, is there any particular message that anybody who's looking at this, whether they're high income earners, high net worth individuals, anything that you want to make sure that you leave upon an impression on them to really understand who Charlotte Rainwater is, what your firm is about, what kind of service it is that you can offer?
Well, like I said, we feel like our clients are interviewing us. We interview them just as hard. We want to have those good long-term relationships with our clients. We want them to be happy with our services. We want to get them the best possible outcome for their situation that we can possibly achieve for them. we want them to feel like when they leave our services that they want to refer their trusted friends, their trusted family members to us because we did such a good job. At the end of the day, we want to feel like we left them in a better place than the day that we met them.
Beautiful. Fantastic. Charlotte, once again, thank you for your time. I do appreciate everything that you've done.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Until next time, guys, we'll see ya. Comment, like, subscribe. We're here. We'll see you for the next episode. Fantastic. That was good.
That's fun.
Thanks.